Good morning, everyone. It seems to be 10:30 on one of the clocks here anyway, so it's time to start this meeting of a local review body. Can I please inform all members of the public and officers that today's meeting will be recorded and will be available on the Council's website following the meeting. Can I also ask if any of you have any electronic devices or phones, if you could preferably switch them off or certainly to silent. Thank you. My name is Councillor Lewis Simpson. I'm the convener of the review body, and I'm joined today on my right by Councillor Henry Anderson and on my left by Councillor Bob Braun. On my far right is Mr David Harrison, who is the planning advisor to the LRB. He is not part of the planning department and has had no previous involvement in any of the applications on the agenda today. On my left is Mr Jeff Fogg, who is the legal advisor to LRB, and on my far left, Mr Danny Williams of Committee Services. I'm also joined in the front row by Mrs Christine Bryan from the Planning Service, accompanied by Mr Christian Smith and Mr Eddie Jordan, who will be making notes and taking back any learning points to their colleagues in the Planning Department. And most important of all, we have Minna on the IT, which is guaranteed to work today. I hope you can all see the screens here. Can I ask you, colleagues, if we have any declarations of interest? Mr Anderson? Neither have I. It's difficult to know how long these meetings will last for members of the public. To give you an idea that no matter what, it would be our intention, if we're still going, to pause at 12:30 for a short recess and begin again at about 1 o'clock. It just depends how it goes. We never know how long things are going to take, but it's your opportunity to watch us working here and see how we look at things and how long it may take. Also, some items may be deferred, in which case they're dealt with more quickly than others. Can we note the minute of the last meeting, colleagues? Indeed. That's fine. Now, let's start the business and move to the first application for review, item 4.1, which is a planning application for the change of use of land and buildings from agricultural contractors business to storage and distribution class 6 and erection of ancillary office building in retrospect, the Stedding Inchcoonins Errol. Can I ask if there's anybody here from that application? I'll get your name, sir.
David Carafell, I'm the AG.
Thank you very much. All right. Mr Harrison, can I ask you to introduce this first item for review?
Thank you, convener. Can I first of all check, hopefully everybody can hear what I'm saying. As you say, it's a detailed planning application for the change of use of land and buildings from agricultural contractors business to storage and distribution class 6 and the erection of ancillary office building in retrospect at the Steddings Inchcoonins Errol. The application site extends to some 0.5 hectares. The former agricultural building extends to some 420 square metres and is surrounded by a hard standing yard that contains a temporary office which extends to some 100 square metres. The remainder of the application site to the west and the adjoining land is in pasture. There are also houses and other businesses and such land uses in the vicinity. And I'll just take you to the photographs now, but you might like to have pages 43 onwards to provide you the location plan and the site plan. The general sequence of the photographs is, first of all, the public road frontage, the site and buildings itself, the surrounding countryside, and then other developments in the locality. So say this is us on the public road looking in the southeasterly direction along the frontage of the property. As you can see, there's a fairly high Lelandii hedge here, and the arrows give you a general direction of how the photographs move from one to another. So swinging slightly to the right here, we then move round to the frontage, which has the building butting onto it, and you can see some of the hard standing on that frontage area in this as well. Again, swinging round to the right of that, we're looking, as it were, across the road to the other side, looking in the northwesterly direction, up towards the railway cutting, the railway crossing, I should say, and then on this side, the other side of the road, we have the equestrian entrance and the equestrian centre, and similarly, again swinging round to the right again, but still on the public road, we have the nearest house on the opposite side of the road from the application site. Moving on from that, still from the public road, we're now looking down the side of the building to the temporary office accommodation, which we'll see in more detail later. But as you can see, there's a substantial area of hard standing here involved. Moving on from that, we have the office building itself. And as you can see, there are also certain areas of grass within the application site as well. So if we move from there and we step back, as it were, towards the back boundary of the application site, looking now towards the public road, we get in the office here, and then adjoining land on the northern side of the photograph beyond the application site. And then from that same position, if we swing round again to the right, we're still catching the office, but we get the main building as well, the hard standing at the rear of that building, and the fairly substantial area of grass on that western side. Swinging around again to the right of that photograph, we're looking across the remainder of that grass area at the back of the site and towards the other land and houses in the farther distance, as it were. Swinging around again to the right of that, we then look across the countryside in that southwesterly direction. And swinging around again to the right of that, we look across again another area of countryside on that western side of the application site. And then swinging around to the right of that, it brings us, as it were, all the way around to where we started off from that position. So moving on from that, we move down to the other side, the southern area. You see there's another strip of grass on that side, as well as the hard standing, and of course the other elevation of the building, and then longer distance views into the countryside beyond. So swinging around to the right of that, we have the main building, as it were, on that other side, the agricultural building. And then within that, this gives you an example of some of the material at that time that was being stored inside the building. These are sort of demountable buildings, as it were. Moving on from that, we have the former brickworks, which is now occupied by Mackey's, as you can see. This, of course, referred to in the papers. And then the timber yard, which is also referred to in the papers. So I'll just leave you that general photograph. Turning first of all in summary to the applicant's case, the applicant considers that the description of the proposal as relating to a change of use from an agricultural rather than landscape contractor's business is erroneous. In declining the previous application, the LRB concluded that it breached local development plan policies and indicated that there was a lack of information to justify the granting of permission. This proposal is seen as providing the necessary information which would enable permission to be granted. Turning first of all in response to reason 1, the presence of the building and its reuse is seen as providing a site-specific resource and opportunity in accordance with Local Development Plan Policy ED3. The business also contributes to the local economy by employing 8 people and buying supplies locally. The site has good transport links, although some 90% of the goods are sent directly to the customer and only 1 lorry per week delivers to this location. The applicant bought the site some 15 years ago. It has been used by 2 landscape contractors' businesses. It has lain vacant and was offered for sale for 2 years prior to the current occupation. Turning to the second reason for refusal, drainage matters have been addressed by the installation of a replacement septic tank linked to the existing outfall. Supporting documents, including an email from SEPA, have been submitted confirming that this arrangement is suitable. This aspect of the proposal is seen as complying with Local Development Plan Policy EP3B. Regarding reason 3, the site has not been in use for farming purposes for the last 15 years. There is no prospect of the land being brought back into farming use, and agricultural classification 3.1 is the lowest classification for prime quality agricultural land. The lack of any agricultural use is seen as a material planning consideration. In addition, the current storage and distribution use and the associated office is seen as low-key and provides a sustainable option which is seen as outweighing the policy position. there is considered to be a dearth of affordable business space in Perth and Kinross. It's noted that this proposal is much smaller than the development at South Inchmichael by Errol, and that was granted permission by the local review body for a change of use from farm buildings to a business use. The LRB is invited to consider imposing conditions to address any concerns regarding noise and the use of land out with the building. The applicant has no intention of using the grass areas for his business. He would accept a temporary planning permission if this enabled the council to monitor the proposal. In conclusion, the proposal is seen as complying with the policies of the local development plan referred to in the reasons for refusal. Turning now in summary to the officer's report of handling, it is noted that the applicant has relocated his expanding business from Environment Industrial Estate to this site. Local Development Plan Policy ED1A identifies employment land uses as being generally located within or adjacent to settlements. Policy ED3 supports the expansion of businesses in rural areas, potentially out with settlements, in circumstances where either an existing business is diversifying or there is a site-specific resource or opportunity. In this local development plan policy context, the site is located remotely from any settlement, in the countryside and on an agricultural site. The planning statement refers to the use of the site for purposes other than agriculture for some time. However, a review of the planning history of the site concluded that there is no certificate of lawful use for the businesses specified in the applicant's statement. The officer therefore disagrees with the argument being advanced that past use of the building and the site by landscape contractors forms a basis for the proposal to be acceptable. The site is not seen as having any site-specific resource which would justify the proposal, which is unrelated to tourism or a rural enterprise. In terms of both planning and sustainability, the business is seen as being more appropriately located within a settlement and a designated employment area. Its nature does not require a rural location. Consequently, in principle, the proposal is assessed as failing to comply with Local Development Plan Policy ED3. It is noted that the site lies within an area identified as prime agricultural land, capability 3.1. Local Development Plan Policy ER5 directs development away from prime land. As this enterprise is not directly linked to a rural business, and there are alternatively cases for such development to be accommodated elsewhere than prime agricultural land, the application does not accord with this local development plan policy. Regarding potential noise disturbance, Environmental Health considers that the applicant's noise impact assessment does not use the appropriate methodology. This is seen as resulting in the measurements having very little impact on the general noise levels in the vicinity of the site. Notwithstanding this, as the nearest residential property lies some 30 metres away, the proposal is seen as acceptable provided any consent that may be granted controls the hours of deliveries and distribution. The proposal does not raise any traffic or flooding concerns. However, the information submitted does not identify the location or specification of the drainage infrastructure to determine if drainage provision as installed is acceptable in relation to Local Development Plan Policy EP3B. Regarding visual impact on the landscape, currently no open storage takes place within the application site. While it provides screening, the substantial coniferous roadside planting is seen as adding little to the landscape quality of the locality. The site is open to the countryside on its north, west and east boundaries, which do not provide a landscape framework for either the buildings or any prospective future expansion. While further landscaping could be undertaken, this would not overcome the underlying zoning and prospective noise considerations. Turning now to representations, 2 letters of objections were received expressing concern regarding development on prime land, the landscape impact, that the proposal was an inappropriate and incompatible land use, and traffic and foul drainage. In this case, there is no request for either a site visit nor a hearing. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harrison. Are there any questions for officers on the application for review? Councillor Anderson. No. Councillor Braun.
No, thank you, Convener.
I have one, Mr. Harrison, relating to this photograph here. Would I be right in thinking that the main activity at present is centred on the office building with the 3 windows, rather than on the agricultural building, which has one delivery a week and not much activity?
Yes, the applicant makes it fairly clear that about 90%, they say approximately 90% of their, shall we say, their distribution takes place by, shall we say, orders being sent directly from where these, shall we say, buildings are manufactured, from that directly to the site where they're going to be used. So that while there, as you can see from the photographs, there was a certain amount of use of the shall we say, the large building in the photograph for storage purposes, certainly in terms of the number of people and the activity in the site, it does seem to focus more on the office use where the business is run from.
And am I right in assuming that there is no permission for the present use?
No, in short, no. That's what we have before us today, yes.
That's the shortest answer you've ever given me, Mr. Harrison. Thank you very much. Yes. That was a compliment. That was a compliment.
I'm happy to take it as a compliment.
Yes, I usually have time to consider my response. Right, well, thank you very much indeed. Right, members, can we proceed to determine the application for review on the basis of information before us, that is, the information contained within the papers and the presentation by the planning advisor, or do we require more information? Councillor Anderson.
Happy to proceed.
Councillor Brown.
Happy to proceed.
I too am happy to proceed, colleagues. Having considered the applicant's papers, the report of handling, the Perth Kinross local development plan, and all other relevant material planning considerations, I'll start us off. We're always presented with a little bit of a difficulty with retrospective permission, because we see what's happening now. But as I see it, the present use is not necessarily what a Class 6 storage and distribution permission would allow. And we mustn't think that the present arrangement is what necessarily will continue. When I look at the reasons for refusal, on the first one, I find out I'm in agreement with that. Although this is a business in the countryside, I'm struggling to see the site-specific reason why it should be there. As regards the second one, I think we do need further information, or we would need the further information to do with the drainage arrangements. And as regards the third reason, I know that the use of prime agricultural land is a sort of grey area. We still have to be mindful of policy EER5 when we make our decisions. So I think, colleagues, having considered this very carefully, I'm minded to uphold the reasons for refusal. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I've listened carefully to both sides, and I must compliment the applicant for a very clear and concise report that they've served. However, it doesn't convince me that this appeal should be upheld. And to compare past operations with the current, in my view, is not part of our consideration. So, as far as reasons for refusal is concerned, reason one, the site is outside a settlement, there's no question about that. and I am uncomfortable with that being the case. I think there is an opportunity elsewhere to run a similar type of a business with storage and distribution that would not be so out in the countryside. The lack of information for foul drainage, reason 2, yes, I agree with that. I do have an issue with 3. I don't think that this would be classed as prime agricultural land. I don't see any evidence of that, and with the scale of agriculture that goes on within the Cars, I would have thought that that land, in my opinion, would be too small to bring back into a profitable way of farming. But that is my opinion. So therefore, I would uphold the officer's decision in this case.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Convener. I'm going to go on a limb again, as I do sometimes. Whilst I understand the reasons here for refusal, although I'm not convinced on reason 3 about it being prime agricultural land. I understand the other 2 reasons. I do take into account the fact that this business is supporting the local economy. There are 8 employees there, and there are other non-agricultural businesses in the area operating there. So I'm, hypothetically now I suppose, but I'm inclined to support the application, although I do have concerns about reason 2, about the drainage, and I would think there would have to be more inquiries on that. I know there's an answer from SEPA in here, but it doesn't give us the questions that were asked to get that answer, if that makes sense. So I'd want a condition on that if we were in mind to go ahead, and also obviously limit the hours of operation. But I appreciate it's now hypothetical only, but that would be my decision, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Braun. So, Mr Fogg, as you can see, we don't always agree. In fact, we usually don't all agree, in fact. So on this occasion, if I understood Councillor Anderson correctly, it's a 2-to-1 to uphold the reasons for refusal. The only thing I might want to add, Mr Fogg, if I may, in reason 2 would be just where it says in the second line, just to say the acceptability of the proposal against policy EP3, just to be clear.
And reason 2. Yeah, okay, yeah. Convener, can I just clarify, you're right, it does appear to be a 2-to-1 decision. Mm-hmm. However, my notes indicate that you were minded to refuse for the 3 reasons given, whereas Councillor Anderson was in agreement with you in respect of reasons 1 and 2 only, but not reason 3. Yeah.
Well, I think, yeah,
yes.
if that's acceptable.
I think it is. I think the decision, I think it is correct that it be minted as a refusal, there being a majority in respect of reasons 1 and 2 only, and a difference between the 2 of you in respect of reason 3, whereas Councillor Braun would have been minded to approve had there been another person supporting him.
Anything else to add, Mr Harrison?
No.
Thank you. So that's the decision made. Thank you very much. You're welcome to stay and enjoy the rest of the meeting, or make a run for it, whichever suits you best. But, so, colleagues, we move now to item 4.2, which is the erection of a dwelling house in principal land 20 metres north of 33 Holding and North Bank, Longforgan. Can I ask, is there anybody here from this application that you are, sir? Right, thank you very much. Mr Harrison, can I ask you to introduce this application?
Thank you, Convener. This is a planning application in principle for the erection of a dwelling house at land 20 metres north of 33 Holding, North Bank by Longforgan. The housing at North Bank is accessed via a private road some 500 metres from the public road to the west. The application site concerns an extended area of garden ground to the side and the rear of the applicant's house. Access would be gained past the western side of the property to the rear area, which measures some 400 square metres. Further housing lies to the east and to the west of the access. Excuse me. A parking area lies to the south, opposite the proposed entrance. Farmland and what appears to be a dog training area lie to the west and north of the main plot. Much of the site is enclosed by high Leylandii hedging. You might like to have pages 199 and 204 onwards provide you with the location plan and the site plan. The general sequence of the photograph will be the frontage of the site onto the private road, the existing house and its garden, the proposed plot, and then some of the adjoining land. So say this is the row of housing to the west of the application site, and this is us looking towards where the public road entry comes in. And then again, swinging slightly to the right of that photograph, we're catching the gable of that terrace of houses and a field access which lies between those houses and the application site. And you can see some of the planting on that boundary in this photograph. Again, swinging to the right of that photograph, we still see the access there, but this is the point of entry of the proposed access through the hedging as it is there at the moment into the application site. So swinging slightly to the right of that photograph again, we catch the remainder of the access, but also we're beginning to pick up number 33, or the gable of it. Swinging round to the right again, we still have number 33, and we're starting to pick up some of the group of houses beyond on the eastern side. From that position opposite the application site, we, as it were, go up the road a little bit, and we catch the housing to the east, and we're just getting the corner of the land which would remain with the garden ground with the existing house. You can see by the blue line there. And now going the opposite direction, swing round to the left of that, we catch some of that frontage and also the applicant's house. And behind the applicant's house, you're picking up some of the Leylandii trees which will appear in later photographs. Swinging round again to the left of that photograph and moving back down, this is us now looking into the access to the application site on the left-hand side of the photograph here, and then the remaining ground which will remain with that frontage of number 33 on the right-hand side of the photograph. So that's the side garden ground. If we turn to the right, we get the front garden ground of number 33. And then from that position, as it were, if we go up towards where the blue line is, we look down the other side of the house, down the garden ground on that eastern side of the house. Moving on from that, we step into the access, and we're looking at the side elevation of number 33, and the break, as it were, between that and the access road. And from that position, if we, as it were, step back a bit, we step into the main body of the application site, looking back to where the access comes through. And then stepping back again further from that, we go to the far corner. That's in the northern boundary of the application site. And as you can see, the hedging enclosing the main body of the application site. And if we swing round to the right of that photograph, we see the back of number 33 and, of course, the housing towards the east. So we swing to the left of that photograph, we look directly across the application site to that housing. Swinging round again to the left of that photograph, takes us to the far corner, and we look up towards, to say, that particular group of houses. Moving on from that, looking to the right, this is us looking across the main body of the application site to the back of number 33. From there, it's quite difficult to get a photograph of it, but there is a certain amount of garden ground to the rear of the existing house as well, and this is obviously a shed and some storage taking place in that area. Stepping out to the application site now, this is us looking at the western boundary and the planting on that western boundary. But you can see we're starting to pick up some of the farmland surrounding the application site. And if we swing to the left of that, we're looking down the back of the existing houses we saw in the very first photograph onto an area of ground which, as I say, seems to be used for some sort of dog training type purpose. So I'll just leave you that general photograph of the main body of the application site. Turning first of all in summary to the applicant's case, the site is seen as complying with the building group category of Local Development Plan Policy RD3. Although it occupies a backland location, it is seen as maintaining the existing pattern of development within North Bank as a building group. It is a definable site by being enclosed by dense landscape boundaries and the adjoining houses. It does not project beyond the northern boundary of the houses lying to the east. The surrounding house plots are of a variable size and are occupied by houses of a variety of architectural styles. A single-storey house of traditional design is envisaged for the site. Details of the plot sizes of other houses have been provided to show that the proposed density of development is commensurate with many of its neighbours. The proposed house would not be, and I quote, hemmed in or an overdevelopment of this land. The access would be separated from the existing house by the existing timber fence. The proposal is considered to reflect and strengthen the character of North Bank. In addition, photographs and other illustrative material, including indicative plans, have been provided to show that the site is physically capable of accommodating a house to the rear of the plot without adversely affecting the amenity or privacy of adjoining houses, while enjoying a suitable standard of amenity itself, exceeding the Council's 100 square metre area advice regarding usable private garden ground. Consequently, the proposal is seen as complying with Local Development Plan Policies PM1A and PM1B. In conclusion, the proposal is seen as being consistent with the aims of Scottish planning policy by providing an opportunity for sustainable development on a contained site within the surrounding rural landscape. Turning in summary to the Officer's report of handling now, the proposal falls to be assessed against the building group category of Local Development Plan Policy RD3 and the associated supplementary guidance. This requires proposals within the group to respect the character, layout and building pattern of that group. This proposal takes the form of backland development, which is not seen as respecting the character, layout and building pattern of the housing at North Bank. The proposal is therefore considered to be contrary to this Local Development Plan policy. In addition, it is anticipated that the amenity of the existing houses would be compromised by the prospective house, resulting in an overdevelopment, thereby failing to meet Local Development Plan Policy PM1, which requires proposals to make a positive contribution to the built environment. While the plans of a house which have been submitted are indicative, it is not anticipated that an acceptable level of privacy and amenity is likely to be secured, notably when parking and turning requirements are taken into account. It is noted that the house is expected to be in close proximity to its boundaries, and the existing house is also seen as being, and I quote, hemmed in by the proposed house, that is. The development and the fencing would enclose a much reduced area of garden ground of the existing house. The proposed access also reduces the amenity of the existing house along the proposed western boundary. While the fast-growing conifer hedging provides screening, this suburban style of planting in a rural context does not accord with criteria M of the guidance. The proposal is considered to be acceptable in terms of traffic generation. Turning now to representations, 3 representations have been received expressing concerns regarding the impact on residential amenity, traffic during and after construction, and disturbance by servicing vehicles. In this case, there is neither a request for a site visit nor a hearing. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Harrison. Are there any questions for officers in this application for review? Councillor Braun.
None, thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
No, none.
I have one, Mr. Husband, in relation to the site layout, maybe on page 202. Is there sufficient, very often when we're talking about vehicles coming and going, is there sufficient room there for vehicles to always enter and leave in forward gear for manoeuvring purposes within the garden ground?
If you excuse me a moment, I'll just make a couple of measurements.
Right.
In short, yes, there would be.
Right. Yep. Wrong-footed me again with a concise answer, Mr. Harrison.
My apologies.
Thank you very much. Right, so I have no further questions. So, members, can we proceed to determine the application for review on the basis of the information before us? That is, the information contained within the papers and the presentation by the planning advisor, or do we require more information? Councillor Anderson.
Happy to proceed.
Councillor Braun.
Proceed.
I too am happy to proceed. So, can I ask you, Councillor Anderson, having considered the applicant's papers, the report of handling, the Perth Kinross Local Development Plan and all other relevant material planning considerations to start us off?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, looked carefully at this, and I would uphold the officer's decision on this particular case. This is definitely a backland development. There's no question about that. And it doesn't respect the other buildings surrounding it in North Bank. Yes, it is contrary to policy RD3 and policy PM1A. So therefore, I would uphold the officer's decision.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I would agree with Councillor Anderson on this. I think it is a backland development. And it's against policy, and I can't see any reason why we should overturn that. So I would concur with the planners on this one and decline the application. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. On this occasion, we're unanimous. Mr. Fogg, I agree with both my colleagues on this matter.
Convener, it's a minor point perhaps, but having heard Councillor Anderson in particular alight on backland development, would you want that specified within the reasons for refusal? It doesn't feature.
Yeah, I think but perhaps towards the end of reason 2, we could insert something in connection with tandem or backland development.
The density and backland nature of the development.
If you're happy with that, Councillor Anderson?
Definitely happy with that.
Okay, anything further, Mr. Harrison?
No, you covered the one point that I thought
Thank you.
was possibly
So
potentially
that's the
missing.
decision made, unanimously to uphold the refusal. Thank you very much for your attendance. I extend my usual invitation to stay if you wish. No, right. So we now move on to item 4.3, which is an application for a residential development in principle, land 60 metres north of Lysol St Martin's. Is there anybody here from that one? No. Right. Mr. Harrison, can I ask you to introduce this application for review?
Thank you, Convener. This is a planning application in principle for residential development at land 60 metres north of Lysol St Martin's. The site is an area of agricultural land currently in use as paddocks. It extends to approximately 0.35 hectares. The site is bounded by a public road to the east, woodland and a war memorial to the north, a group of buildings to the south, and open farmland to the west. I'll take you through the photographs now, but you might like to have page 271 onwards, provide a location plan and site plan. The general sequence of the photographs will be the woodland to the north, the site itself, the house to the south, and then the site as seen from the countryside approaching from the west. So I say this is the house immediately to the northern side of the public road where the war memorial is, which you'll see shortly in other photographs. So swinging from that junction, as it were, round to the left, we start to take in the war memorial on the opposite side of the road from that house, and of course the woodland which backs onto that. And as we go up from that, it gives you a little bit of a detail of the war memorial, as it were, looking through an area of the woodland towards the site itself, and you'll see the house Lausanne beyond. So swinging to the left of that photograph, still at this junction, you can still pick up the site, the woodland, and the site and the house beyond. And swinging round to the left of that, just to give the impression of the nature of the woodland there on that eastern side. We then move up the road a little bit to the corner of the application site, backing onto the woodland. That's the northern boundary. And you can see the western boundary beyond the paddocks, as it were, and then the countryside beyond that. But from that same position, if we swing round to the left, we're looking up the application site towards Lausanne. You've just still got the public road there as well. So swinging round again to the left of that, we have the public road and the woodland towards the east. So from that position, if we go up that road, we pick up the stable buildings and the ground on the opposite side of the public road from the application site. As you can see, we're just clipping the application site frontage on the right-hand side of the photograph there. So one or two photographs from that position, swinging round towards the left. We look up towards the house on the top of the ridge there. This is the fields on the eastern side, the opposite side of the public road from the application site. Again, swinging round to the left of that, we catch the woodland and the field on the opposite side of the road. From that position, we then move up to the northern end of looking in a northerly direction, down towards where we started off at the far end of it. So this is looking down the main body of the application site, and the frontage onto the public road, of course, is on the right-hand side of that photograph. So swinging round to the left, we're looking onto the woodland beyond, which are referred to towards the north, the main body of the application site in the foreground, of course, and we're just picking up that, shall we say, western boundary. Swinging around again to the left from that photograph, we pick up the small stable or enclosure for the horse on that southern boundary. This is next to Lausanne. So we swing round to the left of that, we get the gable of Lausanne. So if we move from that position up to the, as it were, the other corner of the application site on that southern boundary, of course looking back down towards the shed, as it were, and then swinging round to the left of that photograph, looking down the main body of the application site to the woodland on the east side of the road, and also some of the woodland next to the war memorial. And swinging round to the left of that photograph, we then of course have the views onto the open countryside. So from that position, as it were, if we move down to the far end of the application site, looking back up, we have the countryside on the right-hand side of the photograph, as it were, and Lausanne and the paddock, and then swinging round to the left of that photograph, we look across the body of the application site. And again, round to the left of that photograph, we look across that northern boundary. Stepping away from that, this is us on the road approaching from the west towards St. Martin's. And so we have the houses, the other group of houses referred to as the group of houses to the north of the application site and to the north of the War Memorial and the woodland. So from that same position, that's one group of houses, and we swing round to the right of that, and we have the application site, and of course some of the woodland as well. swinging around again to the right of that. Sorry, I beg your pardon. We have, we just have the application site. That's probably the main photograph there. But I can leave you with that general photograph of the application site itself. Turning now in summary to the applicant's case, the applicant considers that the assessment of the proposal has been unfair and does not reflect the development that has taken place at St Martin's in recent years. The site is seen as lying within St Martin's. The officer's view that St Martin's comprises a number of individual building groups is not accepted. The buildings to the south comprise 2 houses and 2 agricultural buildings and, as such, are considered to qualify as a building group in terms of Local Development Plan Policy RD3 and the associated guidance. It is the applicant's view that the buildings at St Martin's form a single entity. While it is spread out and does not and has no discernible centre, the War Memorial Junction could be seen in that context. The proposed development is viewed as enhancing the built environment, utilising plots within an existing settlement in a way that does not extend that settlement. It is noted that the woodland to the north is owned by a proprietor of a house beyond, and it is considered that it could be interpreted as if it was part of that property. The proposal should not be considered as creating ribbon development. It is also noted that ribbon development involving a large house has already taken place on St Martin's Mill Road to the north and near the manse, and also near the manse. While it's seen as providing a precedent, these are seen as providing a precedent for further development. The site could comprise 3 house plots, but 2 are envisaged to reflect the nature of St Martin's. There is a mixture of architectural styles locally, and it is envisaged that the proposed house would be respectable of St Martin's in terms of their design. The objections are generally refuted. Access concerns are seen as over-exaggerated, as is the suggestion that the proposal would lead to further and larger scale housing development. Adequate screening can be provided to ensure that the integrity of the War Memorial is not diminished. It is also noted that many such memorials are located within urban settings. The proposal is seen as potentially adding to the choice of house types and living environments available in a way that is reflective of the aims of TAE Plan 16 and the Local Development Plan. Turning now in summary to the officer's report of handling, to the south of the application site there is a nucleated group of buildings. The buildings to the north are seen as forming a distinct grouping separated from the site by the intervening woodland and War Memorial area and the public road. There is considered to be both visual and physical separation between these 2 building groups. Such small groupings are seen as a characteristic of St Martin's. Consequently, this proposal, which seeks to link the 2 groups, is seen as failing to respect this characteristic of the rural area. The Housing in the Countryside guidance does not support proposals that contribute to ribbon development. This proposal would extend development along the public road frontage in that form. In addition, the proposal is not considered to be supported as a form of infill development. The site is separated from the building group to the north by the woodland and War Memorial. It does not therefore occupy the full extent of a potential gap site between existing houses, as required by the guidance. The proposal does not fall within any other of the categories of Policy RD3 that might lend its support. In this case, it is noted regarding representations that 10 representations have been received which express concern regarding the proposal being contrary to local development plan policies, having poor access, forming ribbon development, and setting a prospective precedent for further development which would have visual impact on the character of the area. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Mr Harrison. Are there any questions for officers on this application for review? Councillor Anderson?
No questions.
Councillor Braun?
No questions on this one.
I have no questions either. So, councillors, can we move to debate? Can I ask you, Councillor Braun, having considered the applicant's papers, report of handling, Perth Kinross local development plan and all other relevant material planning considerations, to start us off?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, having considered all the paperwork and the photographs, I am of the opinion that it would contribute to urban development. It certainly is not an infill site in my mind, and therefore I would concur with the planning officer's decision as laid out in reason 1, and I see no reason to overturn it in any way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Braun. Councillor Anderson?
Thank you, Convener. I would agree with my colleague there, and I think that the reasoned refusal are quite right. It's adversely affect the rural character of the area. That is a definite. Proposal is located out with the nucleate and well-defined existing buildings. I agree with that. Also notice that this development is not well defined in the western boundary, which is also a requirement when one is going for developments of such. So therefore I uphold the officer's decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I find myself in the unusual position of agreeing completely with you both on this one, and I have no more to say than that. I think that's a three. All three of us agree to uphold the reasons for refusal. So are you happy with that, Mr. Fall? Yes. Right. Anything to add, Mr. Harrison? You happy with that one?
The only thing I was just quickly looking over the reasons here. There isn't a specific mention. I'm picking up on Councillor Anderson's comment about the lack of enclosure on the western boundary. Were you wanting any specific mention of that in the wording of the notice?
I think I think we might delegate that to you and Mr. Fogg to include that in the reasons.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
I think it's an important point. Now to item 4.4, which is formation of vehicular access in retrospect, South Inchmichael Farm, Errol. Can I ask if there's anybody here from that application? All right, thank you. Welcome. Mr. Harrison, can I ask you to introduce this application for review?
Thank you, Convener. This is a detailed planning application for the formation of a vehicular access in retrospect at South Inchmichael Farm, Errol. Planning permission was granted for the formation of an alternative access in March 2017. This application concerns a revision to that route to form the access road. You might like to have page 363 onwards, which provides a location plan and site plan. I'll take you through the photographs now, but you might like to have them in front of you. I beg your pardon. You might like to be aware that the sequence of the photographs is, first of all, the existing access, the proposed access, then some of the buildings which have previously been granted consent for business purposes, and then the site of a new agricultural shed. So the first photograph, as I say, is the existing access track as seen from the public road. And this is, you maybe just pick up on the right-hand side of the photograph, the house which is also referred to in the papers, and the access to that, which again will appear in later photographs. So swinging slightly to the left of that photograph, we, as it were, look up the public road to that entry, and as you can see, there's a very high stone wall on the far side of the access road, which interrupts visibility, which is one of the main reasons behind the need for an alternative means of access. So swinging round to the left of that, we move down the road slightly to the position of the proposed entry, which has been partially formed, as you can see here. And you're just with the yellow line, you're picking up the relationship between that and the existing access. So the sequence of photographs will now, as it were, take us up the line of the access road as it's been formed. So we move from that position into the site, as it were, and this is us now standing on the access road, and you can see the former agricultural buildings which are becoming business units in the far distance, and the trees that you see also are associated with the house. And from this position, as you can see, there's also, although the access road is passing through what was the corner of the field, you can see the line of the hedge which encloses the existing access road. So from that position, as it were, if we move up the access road as it's been formed, we now have the existing route identified, the former farmhouse positioned behind the trees also, and the red dotted line shows approximately how there is a difference between the as approved line of the road and the position we're standing in as the as built line of the road. The next photograph will give you a little more detail of the gate entry there, which is where there was going to be a spur off the access to rejoin, as it were, the existing access, as you'll see on the plan, and this is obviously a spur which would take you through and across into where the farmhouse is. Swinging slightly to the left of that photograph, we then look from that position up the remainder of the access road which has been formed towards the buildings. And from that position, if we go up the road, this is where we enter into and, as it were, join up with the yard area associated with the buildings. And if we move into the yard and look back again, as it were, we look back down the access road that's been formed within the field. And then if we step back a little bit from that again, we catch that, but we also catch the existing access. And then from that position, just to give you a bit more of an indication of what the access is serving, we turn round, we have some of the existing buildings, but also the building which is started to be under construction, a new large agricultural building. So this is us, to say, looking across the site of the new building that's under construction, or shortly will be under construction, to the business units. And then from that same position, if we swing round towards the left, we're looking across the remainder of that development site to the countryside beyond. So I'll just leave you that general photograph. Turning first of all in summary to the applicant's case, excuse me. The access that's been formed is seen as being little different from that which has been approved and, in that respect, has much the same impact on the character of the area. The approved and installed routes of the access are shown on page 365. The access that has been built partly overlaps with the approval and largely runs parallel to the existing track. The applicant is willing to close the existing entrance with a hedge and remove, aerate, cover with soil and seed the sections of the existing track that would become redundant. He is also willing to plant hedging along the countryside boundary of the proposed access. Regarding potential archaeology at this location, it is noted that the investigations have indicated that no archaeological remains have been found. Turning now in summary to the Officer's Report of Handling, the planning permission for the access was granted in March 2018. That was subject of a condition requiring an archaeological investigation to be undertaken prior to the commencement of works. This was not undertaken, and an enforcement notice regarding the breach of the planning condition was served in February 2019. This proposal seeks to regularise the unauthorised development. The formation of an alternative access to replace the existing entry is seen as acceptable in principle. It provides a safer point of entry and more suitable provision for turning of larger vehicles and is therefore acceptable to transport planning. However, this proposal creates two access roads running in parallel instead of connecting with the existing roadway to minimise the land involved and in this archaeologically sensitive area. The works that have been carried out are assessed as having already damaged any archaeological remains that were present. If the road was being reinstated, Perth Kinross Heritage Trust recommend that an early consultation should be undertaken to avoid further disturbance of any such remains. While the existing road is enclosed by a hedge, the access that has been formed is open to the countryside and is seen as highly visible. In this case, there are no representations. However, there is a request for a site visit, but no request for a hearing. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Harrison. Are there any questions for officers on this application for review? Councillor Braun.
None for this one.
Councillor Anderson.
Can I ask, looking at these pictures, there seems to be quite a lot of development going on there, but no actual landscaping to get the developments sort of blended into the countryside. Is there any conditions for landscaping?
Right. You may remember, or I can't remember whether you're a member of the LRB, which considered the change of use of the buildings, that's the former farm buildings, to a business use, but that was subject to a condition requiring, I think it was described as structural landscaping associated with that development. Whether or not there are any landscaping conditions associated with the new development that's being undertaken is something I'm not familiar with, to be honest. I think there was, but I can't quite remember with absolute certainty. The applicant is, of course, offering that there be some landscaping undertaken in relation to the proposal which you see in the photograph here, to help to assimilate it in the countryside, both in terms of the, shall we say, a degree of reinstatement of the existing access, and also suggesting that some landscaping could be undertaken in relation to the boundary between the access road and the countryside, which is of course the most open boundary. But there is no information with the application you have before you today to demonstrate what that landscaping might be, either in that area or, for that matter, in the corner that becomes, if you like, landlocked between the existing access and even the approved access or this access. So you don't have actually any detailed information on the landscape proposals which has been, as it were, proffered, and obviously therefore you don't have any comments from the officer beyond dealing, shall we say, with what's in front of them in terms of the ability of that landscaping to assimilate or otherwise the access into the countryside.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Ranson. I have no questions. So, members, can we proceed to determine the application for review on the basis of the information before us, that is, the information contained within the papers and the presentation by the planning advisor, or do we require more information? Councillor Braun. Councillor Anderson. I may need some guidance from you here, Mr. Fogg. I'm a little torn with this one, Mr. Fogg. I feel perhaps there is a lack of information regarding the landscaping, and I wonder whether it would be appropriate to defer this matter until we had that at this point, or whether we should move to debate and do so.
I think you have a discretion. I mean, if you're tending to the view that you would want that information before assessing it further, it probably would be logical to halt matters now, if your colleagues were in agreement that that would be helpful information.
Well, I think yes, I would be happy to hear what Councillor Anderson and Councillor Braun have to say before I go any further. So, Councillor Anderson?
I believe if one person wants to defer, then we defer. That's only my opinion.
Not just because I'm the convener. No, right. Councillor Braun?
I think Councillor Anderson's right.
Right.
I would be happy to defer anyway.
Right.
So,
But I think we'll halt things here then, Mr Fogg, and defer, because it's my view there seems to be a very busy part of the world. There's redundant agricultural buildings that have had a change of use. There's then a new agricultural building. There seems to me to be no landscape plan that's had any effect on the landscape, shall we say. And I think I would be happier to see a landscape, certainly for this area. I also feel we're having our credulity tested, perhaps, if we were to believe that such a large piece of roadway has been built by mistake. So I think I would like to see the landscape plan for round about it before I went any further.
So can I just be clear there? There was reference made to landscaping, the agents referred to landscaping of the road, the unauthorised road as built, but there was separate reference to landscaping of the change to the Class 6 units that were previously considered and consented at an earlier meeting of this committee. Was it both schemes you were interested in seeing?
I think it's best to see the whole thing in its entirety, I think. I would have a particular concern about the landscaping surrounding the redundant road, especially between the new piece and the South Inchmichael house.
Okay.
Okay, happy with that, Henry? Okay. So, are you happy with that, Mr. Fogg? Yes. Yeah. Anything to add, Mr. Harrison?
Yes, I mean, I think you, if I understand you correctly, you're wanting to understand the whole entity and its landscaping.
Yes. I think that would be helpful in making our decision. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Right. So that one is deferred. Then we'll see you another time. So, colleagues, let's move on now to item 4.5, which is the erection of a dwelling house and garage land 30 metres northwest of East Ballandine Lodge in Stour. Can I ask you, is there anybody here from that application, can I ask? Are you for the applicant? The applicant. All right. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome. So, can I ask you to introduce this application for review, Mr. Harrison?
Thank you, Convener. This is a detailed planning application for the erection of a dwelling house at land 30 metres northwest of Easter Ballandine Lodge, Ballandine by Inchtour. The application sites form part of a larger and former plum orchard. The proposed house would be a single storey comprised of two linked pitched roofed elements. A detached garage and courtyard is also envisaged. The walls would be clad in vertical timber cladding and the roof in natural slate. And just while I take you through the photographs now, you might like to have pages 447 onwards, provide you a location plan and site plan, and of course drawings of the proposed house. The general sequence of the photographs will be views from the public road, the associated and adjoining lodge, the site and its boundaries and context. So I say this is us on the public road as we approach Ballandine, looking across the intervening field and up to where the application site is. And obviously you can see both the lodge immediately adjacent to that and of course Ballandine House. Easter Ballandine, I should say. So again, swinging round to the left of that previous photograph, we're still just catching the lodge and the site on the extreme right-hand side of the photograph, but this gives you a bit more of a context of the other buildings forming Ballandine. moving up the road from there, but still on the public road, looking directly, as it were, at the application site and the lodge. From the public road, looking, I say, in a northerly direction. I should maybe mention, obviously the issue of trees is particularly critical in this application. Some of the trees you're looking at are trees within the applicant's ownership and control, and some out with. So just to be clear on that. And we move a little further up the road again from that. We now move round to the access road to the application site. And we have Ballandine House here. And swinging round to the right of that, we move to where the entry into the application site from the private access road is envisaged. So we've got the access to Ballandine House on the extreme left-hand side of the photograph, and then this point of entry envisaged from the private access road. The access, the application site is, shall we say, really beyond that. And as I mentioned, trees there, the trees you see next to the red line are within the garden ground of Ballandine House. And you're just picking up an oak tree in the corner here, which is obviously on ground belonging to the lodge. So swinging to the right of that, we get the lodge itself, which of course is a listed building. This is us looking in that northeasterly direction. And if we go up the private track, as it were, fronting onto the lodge, we can look back in a northwesterly direction this time. And then we move from there, as it were, behind the lodge. So this is the area immediately behind the lodge. Swinging round to the right of that, we then look up the edge of the application site, that's the eastern northern boundaries of the application site, to the area which was largely and previously occupied by the orchard. From that position, we then move right across the application site, so we now look down towards the roof of the lodge, as you can see here. So we have, the boundary with Ballandine House on the right-hand side of the photograph. And we can swing to the left of that, looking across the application site from that boundary. We look across in an easterly direction across the main body of the application site. Swinging round again to the left of that from the same position, adjacent to the boundary with Ballandine, we look across the land immediately to the north of the application site and the trees in the far distance, as it were. And then swinging around again to the left of that, we look up the remainder of what was previously occupied by the orchard. And of course we have the trees on the higher ground beyond. Swinging round to the left of that, we're looking up again to those trees and the upper area of the orchard. So we move from there, as it were, across to the other upper corner of the application site. So that's looking back to where we were in the previous photographs towards Ballandine House. And we have that northern boundary of the application site. And then we swing round to the left of that photograph and we look down the main body of the application site towards the lodge and of course the countryside beyond. And then we swing round to the left of that photograph again. We look right down that boundary of the application site. Swing round to the left of that again, we look across the field beyond. And again to the left again, we look up to the orchard area and the woodland to the north. From there, if we move on into the application site itself, and this is taken from approximate position of the proposed house itself, a fairly central position in the house, looking across the back and the roof of the lodge towards the countryside beyond. So I'll just leave you with that general photograph of the application site. Turning first of all in summary to the applicant's case, the orchard was assessed by a professional arboriculturalist who concluded that the trees were not worthy of retention. The trees were subsequently removed in early 2018. The proposal has been the subject of pre-application written exchanges with the Council's planning and conservation officers. These led to a number of revisions to accommodate the concerns expressed on certain aspects, including the undertaking of the tree survey. the preparation of a design statement, and the submission of a detailed rather than an in-principle planning application. In addition, the planning application submitted in 2017 was withdrawn and resubmitted to remove the access road which would otherwise have surrounded the listed Easter Ballandine Lodge, and the provision of additional landscaping. Overall, the feedback received to the proposal was seen as positive. The proposal was seen as acceptable under the building group and infill categories of Local Development Plan Policy RD3. Consequently, the officer's decision in refusing the proposal is seen as contradicting the views that were given and the advice given that had been followed. The site lies adjacent to a building group. The proposal is described as providing an architectural bookend as an extension to that group. The northern boundary is seen as defined by the rising topography of the land and the inferred building line following from the rear boundary of Easter Ballandine House. The eastern boundary has a post and wire fence and has been the historical edge of the former orchard for over 30 years. It lines up with the eastern edge of Eastern Ballandine Lodge. Landscaping, including the planting of large standards, is proposed to help to define the boundaries and protect the privacy and setting of the lodge. This is seen as an enhancement of the landscape in comparison with the former orchard. The western and southern boundaries abut Easter Ballandine House and the lodge respectively. The proposed architectural approach and design has been generally welcomed, and there are no objections from statutory consultees. The objections to the proposal from third parties are considered to be unfounded in terms of planning considerations and veer towards a personal dislike of the applicant. Turning now in summary to the officer's report of handling, the previous planning application was withdrawn and revised due to a number of concerns. The proposal falls to be assessed against Local Development Plan Policy RD3 and the associated Housing in the Countryside guidance. The application site does not lie within a building group. It is assessed as a potential extension of a building group. The boundary definition is seen as sufficient on the western and southern boundaries adjacent to Eastern Ballandine House and the lodge respectively. However, the site is not seen as having definable boundaries on either the northern or eastern boundaries. The woodland further up the slope is seen as being too far away from the site to provide such enclosure. Consequently, the site is seen as failing to meet the requirements of Local Development Plan Policy and the guidance for the extension of a building group due to the lack of definition on these two boundaries, either in terms of topography or well-established landscape features. The proposed planting does not currently exist. The proposed house is expected to be intervisible in views from the south with the listed Easter Ballandine as a Category C building and Ballandine West Lodge, a Category B building, notably due to its more elevated position relative to the lodge. The recent removal of the orchard has increased the prospective visual impact of the development on the setting of these listed buildings, notwithstanding the use of visually recessive external finishes and the proposed planting. Separate from the concerns regarding the principle of the development, the site layout, design and materials of the proposed house itself, which has responded to advice to change the external wall finish, are seen as being of high quality and sympathetic to a rural context. The proposal is not considered to raise concerns regarding the residential amenity of the adjoining houses, access, flooding or drainage. Turning to representations have been received from 19 parties, including the Community Council, and these concern mainly the proposal does not accord with Local Development Plan policies, the site is not an infill site, there is a lack of boundary definition, The proposal would take the form of ribbon development, concern regarding the visual impact on the landscape and the settings of listed buildings, the loss of the orchard, and a concern over flood risk. In this case, there is neither a request for a site visit nor a hearing. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Harrison. Are there any questions for officers on the application for review? Councillor Anderson.
No.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Convener. I just have one question, actually. It's probably more for Mr Fogg, actually. It's on page 587 of one of the last letters in from the architect. There's a sentence here which I'm a bit concerned about. I'd like him to clarify, if I may, in the first paragraph. There is an inferred contract between the applicant and the planning officials where the applicant goes forward following guidance from the planning officials at financial expense. Is there such a contract inferred or not? That seemed to be a worry for planning officers, I would think.
I would not accept that. I would not accept that the pre-application discussions that took place between the applicant's agents and officials infer a contract or in any form. It's guidance, and I think, as I understand it, officers go to some trouble to ensure that it's no warranty that there'll be a successful application at the end of the process.
Okay.
Yeah, do that, Councillor Brown. Mr Harrison, could I ask you to go back to the photograph going north from the public road, please?
Is it these photographs?
Yes,
Or-
that one will be fine, yes. Right, can we see the next one?
Certainly.
Yes, that's better, yes. Right. Yes, and is there one next to that as well?
Well, it's a little bit not from the same position. It's further down the road.
That would, but that's the one, yes, that would be fine, yes. Yes. As we look at the trees in that photograph, Mr. Harrison, which are the trees within the applicant's ownership, roughly?
I think as you look at that photograph, they're principally the group of trees, or not, I don't think it's actually all of them, but the group of trees on the extreme right-hand side of the photograph. Obviously, there's a whole area of woodland further up the slope, but if you're thinking of the trees in the, shall we say, more in the foreground in the context of the site and the lodge, that I understand is on land in the applicant's ownership.
Right.
But some of the trees are within the ownership of the lodge, and I think I showed you in another photograph the trees on the, if I can just go on to that. The trees you're seeing there next to the driveway going up to Easter Ballandine House are on, shall we say, the Ballandine House side of the fence rather than the application side of the fence.
Right. Could we go back to the looking north photo again? If
Yes,
we
of
may?
course. That photograph or...
That one's fine. So the site stops roughly where the yellow arrow comes down, is it? And there's another area of field between the site and the woodland, is that correct?
Yes, maybe if I go on to one of the later photographs, if that's the boundary you're thinking of, sorry. Even that photograph shows the sort of the split, as it were, between the site being, shall we say, the lower level of the slope and then the slope rising up towards the woodland. My understanding is the orchard, shall we say, well, it went up the whole slope. If you look at Google Maps or something like that, it shows it takes up the whole slope, but there are no trees there to give you a point of reference any longer.
And then, I mean, the red line there's amplifying the point that there's no discernible boundary as such. It's just been drawn in the field, is it, in effect?
In effect, it's an open ground, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Harrison. Thank you. So, members, can we proceed to determine the application for review on the basis of the information before us, that is, the information contained within the papers and the presentation by the planning advisor, or do we require more information? Councillor Anderson, happy to proceed? Councillor Brown?
Happy to proceed.
I too am happy to proceed. So we will move to debate. Can I ask you, Councillor Braun, having considered the applicant's papers, the report of handling, Perth Kinross Local Development Plan and all other relevant material planning considerations to start us off.
Thank you, Convener. It's been a full package to read through on this case, but I think it comes down to the fact that in this instance, I think the planning officer is correct. In his first reason for refusal, he makes it clear that it doesn't comply with policy RD3, which I think the photographs quite clearly show there are no discernible boundaries on which to work from. So I would agree with what he says there. I also feel that there would be a negative influence on the lodge. Again, looking at the photographs, I think that the new house would be overbearing when you see it from the public road. And having seen the photographs of the size of the lodge now, I would think probably overwhelming would be a better word. So I concur with the planning officer's decision on this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Braun. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I agree with my colleague that I would uphold the officer's views on this. I know the applicant's submission, they said that there would be a lot of enhancement done by landscaping, but I think this would be nullified by the overbearing size of the development, and it would have a negative impact on the adjacent listed buildings, so I uphold the officer's decision.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Anderson. I have to say, I too agree. I feel the reasons for refusal possibly don't go far enough. We'd have a couple of additions perhaps, but I feel this very much is against the spirit of the housing in the countryside. It's not appropriate between the two listed buildings, and particularly would be particularly visible from public road, and is an addition rather than an infill or anything of that nature. So I think once again we're in complete agreement, Mr. Fogg, that we uphold the reasons for refusal, and with my colleague's permission I would make a couple of additions, if I may. I think we should make mention in reason 2 of the elevated position of the proposed site. And in reason 1, I think again towards the end, in addition to it not meeting the criteria of building groups, I would think that the topography of the area and the landscape setting, if we can put that would be inappropriate for those reasons too. If you agree with it, Councillor Anderson, Councillor Barry, yeah. So happy with that, Mr. Harrison?
Yes, and
anything else to add?
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. So if we can move on now to item 4.6, it's the extension of a dwelling house, the Lodge Balruddery in Invergowrie. Can I ask you, Mr. Harrison, to introduce this application for review? Is there anybody here from that application? What did you say? You are? Oh, right. On you go, Brad.
Thank you, Convener. This is a detailed planning application for the extension to a dwelling house at the Lodge Balruddery by Invergowrie. The proposal concerns a 1.5-storey extension linking the house with its garage. The ground floor would provide a gymnasium, shower room, sauna and swimming pool with associated plant room. 2 bedrooms with 1 ensuite would be at first floor level. The design is broadly reflective of the form and materials of the existing house and garage. And I'll take you to the photographs now, but you might like to have page 621 onwards, which provides you with a location plan, a site plan, and drawings for the proposed extension. The sequence of the photographs will be the existing house and its grounds, and then the site of the extension. So I say this is us approaching the house, looking in a westerly direction. We obviously have the driveway leading up to the house in the main part of it. I should maybe explain at this point, the red line shows the extent of the application site. There is, of course, an area of ground which is referred to in the papers, which seems to enlarge that area of what appears to be cultivated garden ground in terms of the grass being cut. But you'll see that as the photographs go on. So if we swing from that photograph round towards the left, we're looking across that larger area, and then round to the left again, we take in a tennis court, and I'm pretty sure this is the firefighting pond, which is referred to in the papers here. And just to give a little more of a detail of that, it's obviously a reservoir for that purpose. So from that position again, if we swing around to the right, we look across the intervening area of grassland towards the house, and the position of the proposed extension, as you see, links the main body of the house with the garage that you see in that photograph. So if we move from there up, as it were, to the house, there we have the garage and the side wing, as it were, of the existing house. This is looking in a westerly direction, and the blue line basically gives an indication where the ridge of the proposed extension would be. And as you can see, it basically matches in with the garage at a lower level than the main house. Moving from there, as it were, we move to beyond that. It gives an opportunity to look back towards where the main body of the extension would lie, which I've sort of indicatively shown with the yellow line there. This is us looking in an easterly direction at what you might say is the back of the house. And then from that position, if we swing slightly to the right, we move to where we're onto the other elevation, the south-facing elevation of the existing house. And as I say, this division between the garden ground as identified in the application site and then the remaining land, which is in the applicant's ownership. And then if we swing round to the right of that, we see that larger area, and again to the right of that, we see the remainder of the area, and this photograph's taken from, shall we say, a slightly elevated position where there's a seating area has been formed on top of a mound. So I'll just leave you with that general photograph of the position of the extension. Turning first of all, excuse me, in summary of the applicant's case, reason one is seen as failing to treat this application impartially as an individual proposal due to the specific reference to the condition of the earlier application for the existing house in relation to the treatment of ground contamination. The contamination it refers to is seen as involving a small area out with the area involved for the proposed development. It is stated that all contamination was removed during the construction of the house. Any issues concerning contamination should be dealt with under the application for the house and is not seen as relating to the current proposal. The applicant is pursuing this matter with the contractor in that context. Regarding reason 2, once the swimming pool is filled, it would only require minimal topping up. The capacity of the firefighting pond required by the original proposal exceeds the capacity of the proposed pool. The pool, which is expected to lose more water through evaporation, is not seen as a matter of concern regarding water supply during the process. Was not seen as a matter of concern. Sorry, I should start that again. Beg your pardon. The pond, which is expected to lose more water through evaporation, was not seen as a matter of concern regarding water supply during the processing of that application. The testing of the borehole water supply in 2013 confirmed the availability of some 3,600 litres per hour of water. This is seen as amply sufficient for the house and the swimming pool. The technical aspects of water supply will require to be determined through the later building warrant process. Informing the planning authority of this matter as having been addressed prior to the commencement of development could be made the subject of a suspensive planning condition. It is noted that the proposed design of the extension is acceptable to the planning service. Turning now in summary to the officer's report of handling. This house and garage have been erected at the site of the former Redmire Farm. This proposal is seen as raising two areas of concern. Firstly, Condition 4 of the planning consent concerning the implementation and verification of measures to mitigate land contamination prior to the house being occupied. The information received on this matter is not seen as sufficient to provide adequate verification to enable this condition to be discharged. Secondly, SEPA advises that the discharge of water to a soakaway from the proposed swimming pool is only acceptable following dechlorination. Alternatively, in the absence of a foul sewer, water may be removed by tanker for treatment elsewhere. In both instances, the officer considers that insufficient and accurate information has been provided to enable a full assessment of the proposal to the extent that approval cannot be given. Regarding the proposed extension itself, it is recognised that this is a sizable footprint and is sizable in terms of its scale. However, its form, design and materials reflect the existing house, and there is no impact on any neighbours due to the remote location of the house. The officer has no concerns in relation to the extension itself. It is noted that the garden ground has been extended onto the adjoining land beyond the area identified as the curtilage of the new dwelling house. An outbuilding has also been erected in this area. The agent has indicated that a further application will be submitted regarding the change of use of that land. In this case, there are no representations and there is neither a request for a site visit nor a hearing. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Harrison. Are there any questions for officers on the application for review? Councillor Anderson.
Just for clarity here, there's a 47% increase in this application, and the officers are quite happy with that. The two issues is the discharge of water from the swimming pool, is that one of them, and water supply, is that correct?
Well, the two issues are, as you say, first of all, the officer is content with the, if you like, the physical proposal to extend the property in the sizable way. It doesn't have an effect on neighbours, and the actual architectural design is seen as appropriate in the context of the house. The two areas of concern relate to contamination, or shall we say the history of contamination, its past treatment and the verification of that treatment and what that might involve. And that's, I think, probably the principal area of concern. And the second area of concern, as you say, is because the property is not on mains water, it's a private supply, and the proposal involves the provision of the swimming pool, and there's a concern there that it may, depending on the information they have, it may affect the availability of water from in the locality if it's not sufficient.
Thank you.
Councillor Braun, any questions from you? No. I have no questions, Mr Harrison. So, we can move to debate. Can I ask you, Councillor Anderson, having considered the applicant's papers, report of handling, I think I've got ahead of myself here, colleagues. Yes. Members, can we proceed to determine the application for review on the basis of the information before us? That is, the information contained within the papers and the presentation by the planning advisor, or do we require more information? Councillor Anderson.
I'm happy to proceed.
Right. Councillor Brown.
Happy to proceed.
Yes, obviously I am, as I was getting ahead of myself, so I'm happy to proceed as well. So we shall move to debate. So can I ask you again, Councillor Anderson, having considered the applicant's papers, the report of handling, Perth Kinross Local Development Plan and all other relevant material planning considerations, to start us off?
Thank you. Yes, this is quite an unusual one, that I'm going to actually uphold the officer's decision, because insufficient details, I think it's up to the developers to ensure that everything is presented to us. And yes, it can be difficult at times to gather all this and to get the details, but we have two instances here where there's insufficient details. So therefore, I would uphold the officer's decision for refusal.
Thank you very much, Mr Anderson. Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Convener. I think I agree to a degree with my colleague, Councillor Anderson. I think it might be throwing a spanner in the works by what was said on the previous application, and as much that I would consider deferring this one, only on the basis that the planning officer has said that he is happy with the design, and I feel that from what has been said, that the decontamination issues, there should be information readily available for that. My biggest concern really is for reason number 2, and I think that's the one that needs to be proved. But subject to that, and given that the planners are happy with the design, I think a deferment, in my opinion, would be better on this occasion.
Thank you, Councillor. This is one of the occasions where I wish I'd gone second. I have to say, although I have some sympathy with Councillor Braun's view, I feel that it is, as Councillor Anderson said, a very unusual situation to have a planning application for which there are no real objections, and only 2 reasons for refusal being insufficient detail of information which I am sure exists and has simply not been provided. So on that basis, I don't know how we resolve this from Mr Fogg, okay, you can advise us, but on that basis, I'm afraid I would go with Councillor Anderson this one and refuse the application on the basis that I feel that these details should have been, these insufficient details should have been sorted out prior to the application, certainly prior to the papers coming back to the local review body. Councillor Anderson.
Convener, I think if one defers, we have to accept that, and it gets deferred, but maybe I'm wrong. Ask Mr Fogg on that.
Did I get my tuppence worth in there? Anyway, we'll see what Mr Fogg
I think,
says.
Councillor Anderson, you might be confusing that with the convention. I understood that where one member wanted a site visit, that would be accepted by the other 2, and that one member wouldn't be compelled to determine it, notwithstanding their view that they would prefer to have had a site visit first. I don't think it has been taken to extend in the way that you said. Yes, it's additional information, but this is slightly different because it was refused for the lack of that information, and your motion had been to refuse it because of that. So it is slightly different there. But it's ultimately a matter for yourselves. But I would see this as distinct from other situations where...
Thank you. Thank you for that question.
Thanks. Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
So I think then, Mr Fogg, it's 2 to 1. Though we all have the same reasons, but 2 different outcomes. I feel that because and it's particularly, I would say, because I'm sure that information exists. It just has not been provided. This could easily have been avoided, I think. Okay. Thank you very much. That's our decision. And thank you very much for your attendance. I thought you were here for the snooker room later on from your waistcoat, but yes. Thank you very much indeed. Now, that's that one. So we're nearly there, right? So, colleagues, if we can move on now, Mr Harrison, introduce this next paper, which is alterations to a dwelling house in retrospect, 41 King Street, Perth. Is there anyone here from that application? No. Right, Mr Harrison, on you go.
Thank you, Convener. This is a detailed planning application for alterations to a dwelling house in retrospect at 41 King Street in Perth. The proposal concerns alterations to window and door openings of an original extension to the rear of this Category C listed building within the Perth Central Conservation Area, following the removal of a small brick extension, 2 timber doors and a casement window. Both doorways have been replaced with UPVC windows, stone sills and stonework below. The window openings have been enlarged and UPVC double doors installed. And you might have page 651 onwards to provide you with a location plan and drawings of the proposed alterations. The sequence of the photographs will be the frontage onto King Street, the elevations of the courtyard at the rear, and then some of the adjoining properties. So I say this is the frontage of number 41, which, as you can see, is a semi-detached property, and it's the left-hand side of the property that concerns you today. So from that position on King Street, we, as it were, go up the side of the property. That's the gable side of the property, and this is us looking down that gable, and as you can see, the gable is fairly tight against the boundary wall at that point. But this is the access down the side, which takes you into this small courtyard area immediately to the rear. So, as you can see identified in the photograph here, we have the doors replacing the window, as was, and then the window replacing the door. And from that position, this is us just standing in the entrance to that courtyard. We swing slightly to the right of that. We're still picking up the double doors, but this is the window in the position where the toilet was demolished. That's, I think, shown in some of the earlier photographs you got in the papers. So if we move from that position, we, as it were, look a little bit up, we get the upper level of the building. And then if we swing slightly to the left of that, we're now standing in the courtyard looking at some of the adjoining buildings. And again, swinging slightly to the left of that again, we're looking at the building opposite, as it were, on the far side of the mutual boundary wall. So I'll just leave you with that photograph. Turning first of all in summary to the applicant's case, the works are seen as preserving and enhancing the listed building and its setting mainly by, firstly, the removal of the former brick toilet block extension, which has been built against a window. Secondly, the replacement of the top hinged casement window with a sash and case window with astragals. And thirdly, the removal of the white paint from the walls and the matching of the new stonework to a high standard. It is noted that there are neighbouring UPVC and aluminium windows in use. This tightly enclosed rear courtyard is seen as being an enhancement, works is seen as being enhanced by the works. The applicant has submitted photographs to illustrate both the original and the works as executed on site. Turning to the officer's report of handling, the proposal is not seen from the public realm and would not change the wider street scene within the conservation area. The alterations do not raise concerns regarding the amenity of adjoining properties. There is uncertainty as to the quality of window and doors that have been removed. The reinstatement of the window opening as a door and the converting of the remaining windows opening is also seen as acceptable. However, the use of UPVC is seen as lacking the detailing and historical accuracy of the original timber materials, dimensions and fittings of traditional windows and doors. While the removal of the extension and the reinstatement of the stonework have had a positive impact, this is not seen as outweighing the harm caused to the character and appearance of the listed building. In this case, there are no representations. There is a request for a site visit, but no request for a hearing. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Harrison. Are there any questions for officers on this application for review? Councillor Braun.
Just a quick question for Mr Harrison. The house on the very left in the photograph there, that's the other half of the semi-detached that we're looking at. It's the house next door, effectively. That's right on the very
house
left.
on the left? No. You mean on the extreme left of this photograph?
Extreme left of that photograph. That's the other.
No, that's, let's see how best to describe that. I think if you turn to page 651, you'll see what it describes as the yard there.
Yeah, they're back to back, aren't they?
And as you can see, it backs onto the property in James Street.
I'm with you. But the windows in there are UVPC as well, I would assume.
You will pick up there are a number of
Yeah.
windows which are
Yeah.
not traditional timber windows, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Anderson, any questions from you?
No,
I just have one, Mr. Am I right in thinking that the fact there are other windows and other features in houses round about within the conservation area that are not compliant does not affect our decision today on this particular application, because we're only looking at this particular application?
There is always the issue of precedent. You have to almost have the two things in your mind at the same time. This is an entity, and you should consider this application and the impact on the listed building, but at the same time be mindful of the broader context. But it doesn't, shall we say, the fact there might be a window in a UPVC material elsewhere doesn't automatically provide a support or justification for this proposal or any other.
Thank you. So that's all my questions. So members, can we proceed to determine the application for review on the basis of information before us? That is, the information contained within the papers and the presentation by the planning advisor, or do we require more information? Councillor Brown.
I'm fine, thank you.
Councillor Anderson. I too am happy to proceed, colleagues. So we can move to debate. So having considered the applicant's papers, the report of handling, the Perth Kinross Local Development Plan, and all other relevant material planning considerations, I will start us off, colleagues. I find this a particularly difficult decision to make today on what's appears to be a fairly minor item. There is no doubt from the photographs and from my knowledge of the area that the works that have been undertaken would be considered by most people to be an improvement. And certainly considerably better than the windows and doors that you can see in the surrounding photographs. However, as I stated earlier, it's always difficult when things come to us in retrospect. It would be better had that not been the case. However, I think on balance, I feel that perhaps on this occasion, and possibly on this occasion only, taken in isolation, to take up the point you made, Mr. Harrison, that I would disagree with the planning officers on this occasion. I feel that although the correct material has not been used, there is no doubt about that, this is an enclosed courtyard at the back of a house, and I feel that to seek any other remedy might be perhaps overdoing things. So on this particular occasion, I would be prepared to not to uphold the reasons for refusal and to allow, on this occasion, the works on the basis that they've been done very sympathetically, albeit without using the correct materials. Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I would uphold the applicant's. I would agree with you that the applicant's decision to use UPVC in this case, because this is not actually out in the street, and that, though it's very hard to distinguish between UPVC and timber windows. We've had site visits, and I'm not going to ask for a site visit for this one, because we found at the site visits that one could look at various houses and couldn't distinguish between them. So therefore, because it's at the back and it's not viewed from the street, I would accept this UPVC in this instance.
Thank you very much, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Braun.
Thank you, Karina. Yes, I would agree with both of you on this occasion. I think looking at the photographs of what was there before, it's a very tasteful bit of work being done to the property. This is behind the front, so it's not going to be seen by the public generally. It looks very much like the original was. UVPC is an acceptable material today. I agree it's a listed building. I think we have to take this in isolation, as you said, but I agree with you both that we should take the applicant's review and approve it as is.
Thank you, Councillor Braun. So another display of unanimity Mr. Fogg. Although I think, if possible, we can find a form of words that stresses the in this instance. We're not setting a precedent here, I hope, or that's not our intention. And also, perhaps, is it possible to mention how unfortunate it's come to us in retrospect? Or is that not for us to say in the decision?
I think you've said it in a meeting that is recorded and available on the internet. It's probably difficult to, it wouldn't normally find its way within a decision notice.
Right. Well, can we therefore delegate to you and Mr. Harrison a form of words to allow this on this occasion? Thank you very much. We're nearly going to make it for 12:30 here. So move on to the last item today, if I may. Moving on to item 4.8. Yes, I'm having trouble with my Roman numerals there. 4.8, and that is the erection of a shed at 10 Kinman Drive, Perth. Would you like to introduce this application for review, Mr. Harrison?
Thank you, Convener. This is a detailed planning application for the erection of a shed at 10 Kinman Drive, Perth. The single-storey flat roof shed would be located in the rear garden of this semi-detached house. It would measure some 6.6 metres by 4.5 metres and some 2.4 metres to the eaves. It would be a timber construction. The rear garden measures some 7.5 metres by some 10 metres. You might like to have page 709 available to provide you with location plan, site plan. The general sequence of the photographs will be the street frontage and then the rear garden. So we'll say this is the frontage of Kilmon Street, Kilmon Drive I should say, and number 10 is identified there. The red line also indicating the width of the building. Moving on from there, we go directly into the back garden, and it's quite an enclosed space, so it's quite difficult to take a sequence of photographs, but hopefully these will give you an impression. This is the rear garden looking in the easterly direction, as it were, down the backs of the houses. A certain amount of material has been stored in the back garden, so the boundaries beyond, shall we say, the blue material you see stored here, just to be clear, the top of the fence. And if we swing round to the right of that, we look, I say, down that rear elevation of the adjoining property and number 10. And we swing round to the right of that, we look down the other side of it in relation to number 12, the boundary there, and you can probably just make out the, shall we say, the shed roof of the number 12 itself there, which is referred to in the papers. And if we move from that position towards the house now, we look back to where we were. So this, it takes in the majority of the garden in this photograph, and the position of the, should we say, the proposed building would be towards that corner that we're looking at. I'll just leave you with that photograph. Turning first of all in summary to the applicant's case. The applicant is content to use some 43% of his garden ground area for the proposed building and sees the remaining area as sufficient usable garden ground for his purposes. The shed is the minimum size to accommodate a snooker table, which cannot be fitted within the house. It would be well constructed and would not be detrimental to the area. None of the neighbours have objected to the proposal. It was anticipated that securing planning permission would be a formality, and he is willing to meet any conditions of obtaining consent. He is also willing to remove the shed should he move house. Turning in summary to the report of handling, this proposal requires planning permission as permitted development rights were suspended through the conditions of the original planning permission for this housing development. This restriction was applied due to the limited private amenity space of the houses and the prospect of later extensions and outbuildings adversely affecting neighbouring amenity. The design of the proposed shed is not assessed as raising concerns. A pitched roof would improve the visual appearance but raises the prospect of overshadowing the neighbour's property. This proposal is seen as having an excessive footprint relative to the limited size of the garden. It would occupy some 30 square metres of the 70 square metre rear garden area, the only private amenity space of the property. It is the officer's view that the garden is not sufficiently large to accommodate the building without adversely affecting the residential amenity of the existing house, contrary to local development plan policy. The proposal is not seen as affecting the amenity of neighbours. In this case, there are no representations and there is neither a request for a site visit nor a hearing. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr Harrison. Are there any questions for officers on the application for review? Councillor Anderson? No question. Councillor Braun?
No.
I have one, if I may, Mr Harrison. If page 710 has the plans, is the area to the front of the house used as car parking, is it?
Yes, I think if I take you back to, you can see there are effectively two cars parked in front of it, and there's obviously a garage as well.
So the only amenity space left for the residents is the area around the shed?
Yes, generally speaking, that part of the street, as you can see, is the front areas are largely occupied by parking provision, and the amenity spaces to the rear, yes.
Right, thanks very much indeed, sir. So, members, can we proceed to determine the application for review on the basis of the information before us, that is, the information contained within the papers and the presentation by the planning advisor, or do we require more information? Councillor Braun.
Happy to proceed.
Councillor Anderson. I too am happy to proceed. So, can I ask you, Councillor Braun, having considered the applicant's papers, the report of handling, the Perth Kinross Local Development Plan, and all other relevant material planning considerations, to start us off?
Thank you, Convener. Looking through all the paperwork on this occasion, I'm happy to overturn the decision. The planner has said quite clearly that it doesn't affect the amenity of anybody else. Given that information, the garden does belong to the applicant. It's his land. If he decides to build a big shed on there for a snooker room or whatever he's going to do with it, that is his decision. Bearing in mind also, being a shed, it's not a permanent structure. It can be removed at any stage for any future occupant. So on that basis, I'm happy to proceed with the applicant's request. The only thing I would say is if we could put a condition that the size of this shed is as quoted in the report of handling, so we don't end up with anything any bigger. But apart from that, I'm happy to proceed. Thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I'm afraid I'll have to disagree with my colleague this time. I think this is overbearing on the area, and I can't believe that a shed that size, etc., won't be detrimental to the neighbours as well. People have to look over, and though it's in, nobody's disagreeing, it's within the occupant's land. It is a big shed, very big. I thought I had a big shed, and it's twice as big as what I have. So working out, if I have a modest, similar house to that, that is quite a sizable lump of timber in the back of your yard. So I would accept the officer's decision and uphold it.
Right, I find myself in a difficult position again, colleagues, although I have sympathy with both views here, really, because in terms of the lack of amenity, it is the applicant himself who is losing amenity and no one else. And we do have, we can, I assume, Mr. Fall, we can condition its removal when the applicant leaves the house, can we? Although we don't know when that will be, of course.
Yes. You could, but yes, as you say, it would be for an indeterminate date. You know, the applicant could be here for 10, 20 years, and it might be difficult viewing that as a temporary or personal, given the uncertainty as to that. It might be simply to grant if you were minded to hold it, given the impracticalities.
Yeah. Mr Harrison, sorry, you had a point to make.
Yes, I was simply going to say I think it would be certainly open to debate as to whether that would meet the test for a condition, particularly because of the lack of precision of what you would be able to write in it.
Yes, I mean, I think on balance, I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Anderson. I think it will be a cramped and over-intensive development, and not one we would like to see in all the back gardens in this area. So I think on this occasion I will uphold the reasons for refusal. That will be a 2-to-1 decision, Mr Falk. Okay. You happy with that, Mr Harrison? Nothing further to add. Nothing further to add.
The only comment I was going to make was if you're looking at the decision notice on page 699, the references to policy RD1. Policy RD1 has a number of subsections, some of which would seem to be more applicable than others. And listening to your comments, it would appear that subsection C of that, which maybe I'll just read it to you, proposals which improve the character and environment of the area or village, and presumably you're saying you don't feel this would improve the...
I think it would be very helpful if we could include that in the narrative, Mr Fogg. Okay. So thank you very much then, Mr Harrison, that's us. And thanks everyone for their attendance. That concludes this meeting of the local review body. Thank you very much.